or East Timor, you die. 10% of women. The Millennium Development Goals focusing on maternity deaths, cut that by 2/3. It cut infant deaths by over a half. It saw the lifting of people out of poverty. So I had this view, now a little bit naive, that history marches on toward better things, progress, more democracy after the fall of the wall in 1989. 1991, the breakup of the Soviet Union, the end of history, you'll remember it. There's going to be more democracy, more accountability, more freedom, more trade. Trading nations won't fight. I had this, let's call it, liberal lens, thinking this is the way the world's going. I have been shocked. We have all been shocked. The rise of China. Now, watching what's happening in Ukraine, for me, is personally excruciating. I can barely watch. It feels almost rude and savage to watch, thinking all I can do is watch. Why can't I do more? The impotence I feel, the rage I feel. We are back to the 1930s. I should have known. My dad, who was pulled out of school, he won a scholarship to Essendon High, but in year 10 in the Depression had to go and work in a women's knitting factory. He thought he'd be making women's garments for the rest of his days. Signed up, went to New Guinea, fought there. When I had the paper round at, 17, 18, I was complaining about 6 a.m. or earlier starts and the cold. I'll never forget my dad. He said, look son, at your age, I was dodging bullets in the jungles of New Guinea, Japanese bullets for 2 and 6 a day, 2 shillings that is. Don't you complain. He was of that generation that didn't just remember depression, but remembered up until Pearl Harbor. Britain was virtually on her knees. A couple of small democracies called New Zealand, Australia, Canada, a few of the empire were in there. The great democracy, America wasn't. The rest of the world was either still colonies and empires, or communist, or fascist. And democracy was on its knees. We came that close to losing it. We thought after the end of the Second World War, building rule of law international institutions called IMF, World Bank, UN, GATT, which became World Trade Organizations, we're behind, that's all behind us now. We're never going to be back in that point. And here we are, potentially back at that point. If Putin wins in Ukraine, we all know China is emboldened in Taiwan. The South China Straits, which so much of our trade goes through, these dark days are back again. And of course it was the Americans in Pearl Harbor coming into the war that changed that history. But we forget, democracies were a minority. You know, again, Freedom House says less than 20% of the world's population today lives in a full democracy. It's very sobering, isn't it? The rise of authoritarianism. Populist leaders, even in democracies, with their ethno-authoritarian populist messages. It's hard to educate kids to keep hope alive, to say, here we are. We have to be strong, and Putin can't win. Otherwise, the might is right of the Greco-Roman world. You probably know the analogy, Athens going to fight Sparta, the other great city-state. Athens and Sparta were vying. On the way, they go to Melios, a little city-state island. The Melians say to the Athenians, it's against justice for you to sack our city and dominate us. We too are humans. The Athenians go, no. You don't understand justice. Justice only exists between equal powers, great powers. You are small, you must suffer what's going to happen to you. We are great, we will do what we want to. And they sack Melos and the city-state. The whole achievement of a rules-based order has been to say, no, justice includes small powers like Ukraine and like Taiwan. And mine is not right. We have a rules-based system. That's, again, the days that we are in. And to keep democracy and justice alive, we need to be forming kids who understand what's at stake, what their values are, what is solid ground they plant their feet on, and know their values. Never before has it been so important for students to have teachers who can keep hope alive, can teach the values that make us strong. Christian college is that sort of place, and with the scholarship system, the prospect that others who would never be able to afford the fees or get there get a chance, I think is just so important. Well, let me bring this to a close by saying that I think we will prevail. I have been amazed and inspired that America, Europe and the West have had a moment of moral clarity. Putin worked on the premise that the West is hopelessly divided. He actually worked on the premise that the West have given up on Christianity, given up on values, that he now represents Christianity. How do I know this? Because in 2013 I had an hour and a half with Putin in his dasher outside Moscow. I was leading Civil Society 20 for the G20. Putin had the presidency. He'd welcomed civil society, curiously, to be at the head table. Had an hour and a half with 4 of us from different countries representing civil society. It was a fascinating exchange, earpieces in, TV cameras there throughout. I saw myself on TV news that night in Moscow and read my comments in the Moscow English-speaking Times. Challenged Putin on Syria and what he was doing. Challenged Putin on why he was using the foreign agents law to close down Russian charities. I'd been briefed. I'd said to him, you have one word in Russian for 2 words in English. Your one word is political. We have 2 words, political and policy. Civil society, which is charities, not-for-profits, World Vision and others. Civil society will criticise policy. It doesn't mean we're being political. It doesn't mean you should see us as your enemies politically. We will criticise this. Why? Because civil society is that glue that really does hold society together. We need people who are good at markets and make profit. We need governments, preferably democratic, and votes. But the glue of people who volunteer, who give, who love, who serve, not because there's votes or money, but because of their morality. Morality ultimately is not about me and I, it's about us and we. What do I owe to others? That's what morality means, us, we. What's my duty? That's civil society. It's born out of that vision of morality. Well, Putin made a promise. He made a promise that he would ask the Duma to repeal the foreign agents law. I was a hero for 12 months in Russia because it was all televised on TV. When I saw Putin in Brisbane in 2014, Tony Abbott, Prime Minister of Australia, had the presidency of the G20. I asked him why he had not repealed the law as he promised. He gave this smarmy answer that the Duma wouldn't agree. Oh yeah? Who controls the Duma? Well, the most interesting thing was the religious thing. He was fascinated I was a reverend. He said, I'm telling young Russians to go back to church. There's too much materialism and drinking and their lives are empty. I'm giving the Patriarch and the Orthodox Church enough rubles. They're building 3 churches a day. I was thinking, gee, this is pretty impressive, actually. So we were discussing on the same line. He was talking about Christianity is lost in the West, but here in Russia, we're keeping it alive. Interesting. Ex-KGB man. His mother, we now know, was Christian. That's why Putin wears a cross, even though his dad was an atheist and he was in the KGB. And so I pushed my luck. I said, Yeah, you say you've got it all together and the church is strong and all of that. Why, President Putin, did you punish Pussy Riot by sending them to Siberia? Remember Pussy Riot? They sang, the girls' group in St. Saviour Christ the Cathedral in Moscow, a blasphemous but anti-Putin song. Church was offended. Putin punished them terribly, sent them to Siberia. I said, why? Why did you do that? And Putin said, well, the church was offended. It was blasphemous. We're stamping that out. We're supporters of Christianity. And I said, well, you've asked me about being a reverend. As a reverend, as a Christian minister, and I would hope this is true of the Orthodox Church, we believe the main feature of the gospel is forgiveness. Why wouldn't the church say, yep, we're offended, we forgive them? A look over Putin's face of utter incomprehensibility spread, and he said to me, why would a church ever say that? With a sinking heart, I realised the Russian Patriarch and the Orthodox Church has become a department of the state, a tribal god for Mother Russia. There's been 176 very brave Russian Orthodox priests who've written an open letter. I fear for them, but they're brave. The fundamental thing about Christianity from the start was it was profoundly internationalist. No nationalist tribal gods, neither Jew nor Gentile. Right from the start we said, and this God's image is in every human. Whatever their faith, their belief, their sexuality, God's image is in them. And the church gets captured. And it happens in other parts of the world too, not just in Putin's Russia. We lose freedom. It takes three things to keep a society free. Firstly, free markets, because that helps us all flourish. Secondly, democracy, the freedom of individuals to have their vote. And thirdly, and this still is just as important, morality. The passionate commitment to say, what are my duties to others? How do I serve? How do I volunteer? How do I give? This scholarship program is part of that third stool of morality. What can I give? How can I expand opportunities? In these times, I trust you'll support what Christian College is doing. Thank you.